Hey, welcome to Bible study. My name's Kyle Kuest, and I'm the student pastor at our Tempe campus. So a big welcome to Mesa and Gilbert. Now, don't worry, just because I'm at Tempe doesn't mean I got a lot of love for you guys. So, for the time I was born all the way to 5th grade, I grew up at Mesa and Gilbert. I've spent a ton of time over there with you guys. I got a deep love for your campus pastor out there. Shout out to John Moten. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a conversation today. We're in the middle of a series talking about ordinary people experiencing everyday moments and encountering an everyday God. And that's it. It's a super simple idea. We're going to talk about a man named Zacchaeus. So if you got a Bible, we're going to be in the book of Luke. Once you get to Luke, find chapter 19. We'll hang out there today. But before we get that, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Kyle. I've got a wife named Becca. We've been married for going on 6 years. Now, it's very important that you get that number right. Don't ever forget how long you've been married. And we just had our first child, a girl. Her name's Blair. She's about 10 months now, which is crazy to believe. She and her cousins who were born during the past year and a half, we call them the COVID cousins because they were born during COVID. And so their experience is vastly different than what we've all gone through. Before we dive into Zacchaeus, though, I need to make a confession. Now, as long as it's a safe place, if this isn't a safe place, I'm going to go ahead and head out. It's been great hanging out. But if this is a safe place, I'd love to confess something to you guys. I have gotten sucked into trashy reality TV. A moment of silence. Now, if you want to insult me, that's fine. You can find me on Instagram. It's my first and last name smashed together. Send me a DM there. I'm ready for it. Send me your heat, your complaints, all of that. Now, if you are like me, I wish I could blame it on my wife. I can't. I was actually scrolling through Netflix. We thought we had watched everything on Netflix, and then I came across this, and I was like, honey, this kind of looks interesting. She'd been watching some TV shows, and I thought it was a way that we could connect. It's not even one of the good, old-fashioned, trashy reality television shows. You know the ones I'm talking about, right? Like Big Brother, Survivor, The Bachelor or Bachelorette. No, this is a millennial trashy reality television show, which some of you in the room are like, you young whippersnapper. That's fine. Like, again, send me all your heat, all your hate. It's called The Circle, okay? It's on Netflix. You can watch it. Highly recommend it. There's 3 seasons. I'm working through season 3 right now. But here, I'll explain it. It's a social media popularity contest, okay? Now, some of you are, the glaze is going back up again. No, it's for $100,000, okay? I want to ask you, what would you do with $100,000? I could give you a really, really long list that would exceed $100,000, but I guarantee there's a lot of things I could use that money for. So the whole idea is they fly in 8 contestants into Chicago. They lock them into an apartment. They cannot leave their room, their house, whatever. You can relate from the past year and a half, right? You're stuck in there, and the only way you can interact with other contestants is through their social media platform called The Circle. Now they get to put profile pictures. They get to interact with each other through this medium. There are people of all ages. That's the fascinating thing. You've got college kids to retirees competing for this. And then the kicker is you do not have to play as yourself. So there's people who come into this show and they play as their brother or their sister, a coworker, a friend, somebody that they've just found online. And they post their picture and build their whole identity around whatever they want it to be. Now you can imagine how this plays out, right? There's some shock when people find out they're not who they actually say they are. You can imagine the stress trying to pretend somebody that you're not. And it goes on and on. I love this show for a lot of reasons. But ultimately, I love this show because I think it mirrors a lot of what we experience in life, in the world we live today. Because you see, we're all going through life, just trying to get through. We're trying to survive. We're trying to win the game, if you will. Trying to live life to the fullest. But on some different level, we all kind of feel this imposter syndrome. Like we're not who we really say that we are. If we're all being honest, we all spend some time pretending like we have it together when we don't. We all put forth an image of ourselves that may not reflect the full story or may not be authentic at all. Here's the truth, and this is the truth that we're going to sit on with the story that we're going to talk about. The sin and brokenness we experience in this world makes imposters out of all of us. And if we give into sin and brokenness over and over again, it can lead to a false identity. Now, here's the definition for a false identity. It's a person who's living and spending their life doing something outside of what God created them to do. I'll say that one more time. A person living in a false identity is anyone who spends their life doing something outside of what God created them to do. And today we're going to look at 3 questions that shape our identity according to the story of Zacchaeus. So if you got a Bible, open up to Luke chapter 19. We're going to start in verse 1. I'll give you a second to flip there. I love this story for a lot of different reasons because there's stories in the Bible that we read over and over again, and they just kind of become old hat. Like we glance right through them, we breeze right past them, and we miss the significant everyday moments that take place in this, and we miss out on who God is in the everyday moments of life. Zacchaeus is a perfect example of this. So hopefully, again, you're open to Luke chapter 19, starting in verse 1. It says this: Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. Now, you're going to have to forgive me because I love to read the Bible in small chunks. Like, I just can't comprehend a full story. It becomes overwhelming for me, so I love to pause along the way. So it says, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. Here's what we gather from this. Jesus has no intention of stopping in Jericho at all. He's passing through. He's got places to go. He's got things to do. He's Jesus, right? He's busy. Verse 2 says this: a man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. Okay, so we need to talk about what a tax collector is. All right, any guesses what tax collectors do? Yeah, they collect taxes, which means they are not popular in town. I don't know about you, but it's painful every time the tax season rolls around and I have to figure out what I have to owe to the government. Sometimes the government owes me something back, but not usually. So he's a tax collector. He's wealthy. We can gather a couple different things from this. Zacchaeus is really good at his job. And because he's really good at his job, that means he's really good at exploiting the people in his community. Now, you need to understand how tax collecting worked back then. The Roman government was super smart. Now, Rome is ruling over Israel at this time, right? Israel is not in autonomy at this point. They are oppressed. And what the Romans would do is they would hire people from the community to collect taxes for them. So they would go up to a guy like Zacchaeus and say, hey, we need you to collect this amount. Now, anything you collect over this amount, you can keep for yourself. You can imagine the strategy that goes into this, right? They have to figure out, how do I get this money and give it to the Romans, but then how do I make a little extra on top for myself? Zacchaeus is so good at his job that it says he's a chief tax collector. He's got the system figured out, and he's wealthy. He's good at it. Here's where we encounter our first question. How do other people see me? How do other people see me? You see, for Zacchaeus, he's seen as powerful and rich, right? He's got a title. He's got notoriety. People know who he is. He's probably wearing nice clothes. When he walks into a room, it probably goes a little bit quieter because they know who Zacchaeus is. He has influence. He has power. He has wealth. Now, you may be wondering, well, what's wrong with that? Well, for the reasons I explained earlier, there's so much wrong with this, right? His identity, everything that he's trying to live to do is for himself. He's using other people. He's taking advantage of his community, all for his own benefit. Now, if you're Zacchaeus, how do you deal with an identity like that? How do you deal with a reputation like that? Well, you hide it, right? You cover it up with nice clothes. You surround yourself with the who's who of town. You buy the nicest things. You eat at the nicest places. And don't we do the same thing, right? When we're trying to project this image of ourselves, when we're trying to cover up and compensate for how other people see us, we do the same exact things. We buy the newest trucks. We spend money on the nicest clothes. We get the newest iPhones. We take our families on nice vacations. We make sure to document all the perfect pictures and post it on social media. Now, maybe not be us husbands, but we have our wives do it, right? And we make sure that our kids play on the best baseball teams or sports teams. We make sure they get good grades so they can get into good colleges so we can brag about it at our HOA meetings. Like, yes, look at little Johnny got into Harvard. Like, we do stuff like this, and it's funny, right? When we talk about it in this context. But there's a harsher reality of this. Because when we spend so much time projecting a false image of ourselves or getting caught up in things other than what God has for us, it makes this very next question a lot messier. How do I see myself? Continue reading with me in verse 3. He, Zacchaeus, wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. You see, Zacchaeus hears Jesus is coming through. I don't know how much he knows about Jesus, but I bet you he's heard stories. Jesus has been doing ministry. He's been performing miracles. He's gathering a following. You can picture the whole crowd shutting down, right? The whole city's closing up shop because they want to see this guy coming through. But there's this problem, right? He's short. How is he going to see Jesus if he's short? And you can imagine he's not liked, right? So Zacchaeus is trying to worm his way through. You can imagine people elbowing, like, get back here, Zacchaeus. Like, we don't like you to begin with. You're not about to see Jesus and cut me off from seeing Jesus. You see, the Bible doesn't say, but I just wonder, right? How many times did Zacchaeus hear that growing up? You're just short. You're just this short, unpopular, dislikable man. And we want nothing to do with you. I wonder the loneliness that Zacchaeus felt. At the end of each day, knowing deep down that what he was doing was on some level not right. We have a funny way of hanging on to those negative labels that people throw on us, or the negative labels we even put on ourselves. I'm certainly not immune to this by any means. When I was in high school, I had this incredible opportunity. We had some friends who offered to send me to a private school in Vermont for smart kids. Now, that might not mean that much to you. I'm talking conservative estimate, 80% of the students who went to this school got accepted into an Ivy League college. Okay? So, don't look at me thinking that I'm super smart, because I was the imposter 100% in this situation. Their kids were brilliant. They both sent their kids to Princeton. They're archaeologists or something. I don't even know what they're doing. But they offered to send me. Now, me being up for an adventure, I'm like, well, I've never been to the East Coast, and it's the fall. I was a baseball player, so baseball was until spring. So I was like, sure, I got nothing to lose. Let's go for it. I got in and very quickly discovered I did not belong. Okay, so for starters, I did not have a pristine GPA. I had no aspirations of going to an Ivy League college, was not super driven by academics. I was there for a good time. The problem was I was also the only follower of Jesus I knew in the entire school. And it did not take long for it to get out. I got all sorts of labels just for even being a kid who wanted to go to church. Now, this is my junior year of high school. I'm not like some little kid. I'm not a junior higher. I'm starting to figure out who I am. I got thrown every name in the book at me. Kids calling me Jesus freak, goody goody, pastor's kid, you name it, I was called it. And I hated it. I wish I could tell you I wore it like a champ, yeah, I'm suffering for Jesus, we're gonna roll with it. I hated it. I wanted nothing more than to blend in with the crowd around me. So I did what a lot of us would do in that situation. I changed. I adapted the lingo. If they made a crass joke, I made it too. If they said a word, I said it. If they put somebody else down, I did too. The music they listened to became the music I listened to. And guess what? It worked. I was in. I got invited to parties. I got to go to New York City. The crowning achievement from that stage of my life is I was invited to a penthouse party in Manhattan. The parents were out of town doing some sort of vacation, all these high schoolers. It was straight out of a movie. And I never felt so alone. I got back and I was looking at myself in the mirror. I couldn't recognize the guy who I'd become, the guy who I was becoming. And I knew that I wasn't going to stay in Vermont. I knew that there was a time where I'd have to go home and I would have to face my parents and face up for these decisions I'd been making. And so I called my dad up late one night. I'll never forget this conversation. I was talking to my dad. I was pouring out all these things that have been happening, the decisions that I've been making, the person I've become. And I'll never forget the words that my dad said to me. The first thing he did is he reassured me. Which I don't know how many of you have ever been broken, what you feel is rock bottom. and you open up to somebody and they show that they love you, that's powerful. Life-changing even. But the second thing he did is he asked me this question. He asked me, how do you think God sees you? Really uncomfortable question. A question that none of us spend nearly enough time thinking about it. And it's a question I didn't honestly know how to respond to in that moment. And if I'm being honest, there's times in my life where I still don't know how to respond to that question. How does God see me? Because of how we view ourselves, I think oftentimes we think that God's going to see us the exact same way we view ourselves, whatever that label is, right? And I wonder if Zacchaeus was the same way. If he wandered onto the street with these half-hearted expectations, not really expecting much from this encounter with Jesus, just, man, I hope I see him. Like, it'd be cool to just be able to say to my buddies tomorrow, like, yo, I saw him. Like, he walked by me. But Jesus catches him, us, and everyone else off guard. Listen to what he says in verse 5. Read with me. It says, when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. Jesus, just for those, so we're on the same page, Jesus is fully God and fully man. He knows who Zacchaeus is. He calls him by name. And Zacchaeus, who's sitting up in the tree, has to be stunned, right? Because Jesus says, I must stay at your house today. Not can I. Not, hey, Zacchaeus, you got like a moment? Like, you got a spare time for me this evening? Do you think I could swing by? No, I must stay at your house today. Can you imagine the silence that must have fallen on the crowd? Jesus, do you know who this is? Zacchaeus, do you know what he's done? Do you know how many people he's hurt? Do you know how he's ruined his life, our life, everybody's life? Zacchaeus, really, that's who you want to spend time with. And for the first time, Zacchaeus sees Jesus for who he truly is. In this moment that could have been ordinary, it could have been another passing thing, it could have been another checkbox in his day, it becomes something so much more because Zacchaeus is forced to make a decision. Do I just go with the status quo or do I do something different? And he chooses to stand. It says he stands up in front of the crowd. This word to stand is very interesting. In Greek, the Greek word used here is histemi. Histemi. It means to stand firm or steadfast, to be sure of something. Zacchaeus, once he sees Jesus, is sure that something needs to change, and it's got to be him. He realizes for the first time he wasn't created to cheat people. He wasn't created to chase after fame, fortune, power, wealth. He wasn't created to live in brokenness. So here stands Zacchaeus right in front of Jesus and his whole town, and he confesses. He confesses that he's been living for himself, that he cheated and wronged people, that he's a sinner. Now, sometimes in the church, we use these big words, and we don't really know what they mean if we're being honest. Confession, I'm going to make it really simple. Confession is declaring to God what you believe to be true. I'll say that again. Confession is declaring to God, and maybe even the people around you, what you believe to be true. He confesses that he's living for himself. It means that when we're confessing, it means that we're confessing all of our hurt, everything that we believe, all the broken things that we've done, everything. And Proverbs 28:13 says this, people who conceal their sin will not prosper, which means they will not succeed. But if they confess and turn from them, they will receive mercy. The story wraps up with this because, again, Zacchaeus offers there's this amazing transformation that happens in Zacchaeus' life. He offers to repay anybody he's hurt 4 times over. He repays all the money he's stolen to this town. Can you begin to imagine the party that must have taken place in Jericho that day? And then Jesus says this, today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham, for the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. Zacchaeus, this short-hated, unpopular tax collector, a person who everybody despised, a person who lived his whole life focused on himself and nobody else, a person who spent years hurting the people God loved, this person, Jesus calls him a son of Abraham, which we don't have time to fully dive into that title, but that is a powerful title. That is a powerful identity. Here's the funny thing. Do you know what Zacchaeus' name really means when you translate it? In Hebrew, his name means pure and innocent. Pure and innocent. Years have gone by where Zacchaeus is living this imposter lifestyle, living as somebody who he was not created to be. And Jesus changes his story. Now, I don't know what this looks like for you. I don't know your story. I don't know how you come in today. I don't know what your past week's been like. I don't know what your life, your job, your relationships look like, your family, none of that. But God does. When's the last time you spent time with God, confessing everything that's going on? I want to create some space for us. I know that there'll be a chance for some discussion after this, but I just want to encourage you to take a moment to spend some time standing in front of Jesus. Now, you can stand up literally if you want, okay? That's fine. But I want you to stand in your posture towards God. Stand firm and steadfast, and I want you to just confess everything that's going on. But here's the exciting thing, is when we do that, he promises to not only listen, but he promises to respond. So spend some time confessing and then listen to what he says back. It might be an ordinary moment that gets turned into something extraordinary.